Greetings, salutations, however you say hello. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is Tip Top Talks Tottenham. I believe episode 8. I probably should have looked that up before I started recording. But nevertheless, I'm here with my very special guest, Jamal. As you can see, he is here in America as well, and he's been supporting the club for a while. And so we're going to get his perspective as well on the 3 trending topics that I've chosen for this week and the upcoming season. The first topic is Tottenham are the future. Yesterday, Tottenham beat Hearts in Scotland in a preseason friendly, and it was a sensational display by the young talent. I had thought that a player specifically for me in the second half was when he had played was Jed Spence. I think that's a major talking point in terms of how his career has started at Spurs so far and how well he played yesterday. So before I go any further into Jed Spence and the match yesterday, Jamal, what did you think about his performance? And was there any other players that stood out to you yesterday?
Yeah, man. I think Spence really, like you said, had a pretty standout performance. We haven't really seen a lot of him in a Tottenham shirt this so far. Him being loaned out to different clubs and whatnot, but I think he played really well, showed some good creativity, had some good flicks, one touches into the box to kind of unlock the defense for our forwards a little bit. So something that I think we've been missing most of last season, especially when Madison was out, and even after Madison came back, it seemed like he was still missing a little bit of a spark, but also seemed like Madison started to have that spark a little bit yesterday for the first half. You know, I think overall for the team we had a little bit more creativity. Even Kulu yesterday with some of those one-touch flicks and quick play, which is again what we've been missing last season. Like I feel like we were playing very slow, and yesterday we were able to play a little bit quicker, a little bit better one-two touches. Um, as far as like the overall team, I don't know if anyone honestly stood out for me in that first half with kind of our first squad. Um, that second half, I think we saw a little bit more creativity as well from some of those younger players, probably trying to get their spot in the team. But Lucas Bergvall, I think actually had a very good game.
Yeah.
Similar thing, just like looking hungry, looking to be on the front foot, looking to take those shots, take those players on, and actually get into the box. So I think overall that was some good link-up play, and I think Mikey Moore as well.
Yep.
I think his goal was fantastic. I think he had some decent positioning, and again was pretty hungry to try to go forward and try to get into the box. Again, I think that's big of what we've been missing in Tottenham is just trying to go forward and trying to go forward quicker, not just on a counterattack. But I think those were kind of my standout players for the most part.
Absolutely. I think just elaborating more on what you said, I think you hit basically all the players that I wanted to discuss. We had talked about before we had started recording this that Jed Spence was really in a lot of central areas throughout
Yep.
the match, and obviously I believe we recruited him into the club as a right wing back under Conte's system,
Yep.
and so it's been really interesting to see his progression. Obviously, if he continues to display performances like he did yesterday, adding a goal and an assist in the single match, if he can just do that every now and then when he gets his opportunity to perform, I think that there is no doubt we should keep him at the club for this season because I think that right back and left back are positions that we need more depth in. But we'll get back into that later. The only other 2 players that I want to hear your thoughts about that you did not mention was Lancashire. Obviously, he was the one who scored one of the goals
Hmm.
for us. I believe that was from Jed's assist, Spence's assist. That nice
I
through
believe
ball. It
so.
was a first time finish. So Lancashire, what are your thoughts about him as a player? And then did you have any comments in terms of Jamie Donnelly playing completely out of position yesterday at left back in the first half?
uh, I mean, I guess going backwards from those two questions, I feel like a lot of people played out of position a little bit. I mean, we had Skip and Sitter back, and same with Archie having him in the center back as well. So it was actually kind of interesting to see. But I mean, I think he actually played pretty well. I don't think he really made any mistakes. I don't think he did a lot to stand out necessarily, which is not always a bad thing. Sometimes just not standing out for bad reasons is a good game. So
For
uh,
sure.
no complaints.
Do you
Um,
think the future is bright here at Tottenham Hotspur? I don't know. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. It was only one
uh,
match, against a Scotland side, but
yeah, I mean, again, yeah, you can't put too much weight into one preseason match. I think the biggest takeaway, though, overall was um, how well the younger team played together in that second half, and how well they linked up together. And I think we were talking the other day too, and how like the team system seems to be kind of melding better
yes,
from like
right,
the senior team to the under 21s, under 18. So it's not as jarring seeing them on the field. It doesn't change the style of play completely. So it
right.
was the same Ange ball basically, kind of up and down, no matter who was on the field. So I think that is probably the biggest takeaway. Again, preseason, so not against a super big club or anything like that, but good to see confidence on the ball from the young players. Good to see again people taking players on. Even Brennan doing that a little bit. Timo doing what he normally does, and at least getting down, getting those low crosses in. I know. I think that's the stuff we need to see. I think it's just as always with Tottenham, we need some consistency. So.
For sure. I think that's very well said. I don't really think I have much more to add there on top of the match yesterday. So moving on to the second topic, I have it titled as upgrades needed.
Okay.
Unfortunately, obviously, we signed Timo Werner at the very, very beginning of the window. Officially, we had to get that done.
Yeah.
First things first, for some reason, and then recently brought in Gray and made
hmm
that signing official as well. So in my opinion, to fulfill the expectations that a lot of our fan base has and deserves to have, we are not in the position right now with the added European football to really go the places that we want with the
Right.
current squad that we have. So it begs the question, how many players and at what positions, Jamal, in your opinion, do you feel like Tottenham need to accomplish something that would be significant next season?
That's a good question. I was kind of perusing our roster, especially after the game yesterday, with some names I didn't necessarily recognize. So, looking through the under 18, the under 21s, and our senior team, and I feel like we actually have a pretty decent roster and a decent
Yeah,
amount of depth as long as our players don't get injured. Which
right.
throughout
That's
a
the
season,
thing.
there's
Yeah,
always going to be injuries, right? But I think we have barring any injuries, a decent amount of depth. I think we could use, honestly, one more player in each position as far as forward, midfield, and defense. But I think we also have a good amount of players that can kind of adjust a little bit. Like last season, we saw Kulu out on the side. Uh, Towards the end of the season, we saw him in the middle a little bit more, especially with Madison out. Um, we've seen a lot from Mickey. Just he can play pretty much anywhere in that back line, whether it's
yeah,
wing back, center back. He's out here scoring goals. But even seeing him play at the Euros, like
yeah.
exclusively on that left back or left wing back kind of position. So we have some players that can do it. I think we just need a few more players that in each position with a little more creativity. So especially up top, forward I think is our biggest weak
Yeah.
link right now. Obviously we have Son who's pretty consistent, Richie who when he's on, but when he's not, it's not there. So I
Right.
think that would be like the biggest gap to fill right now. I don't know who I would want to fill that role necessarily, but I think that would be if we signed a forward. I think that would be if that's all we did, I'd be happy. But I
I
think we have a decent amount of midfielders. Again, barring any injuries, barring consistency from guys like Basuma. Um, so we'll just I think one in each. One more midfielder. Obviously, I think every Spurs fan is kind of fingers crossed for Eze because he again brings that creativity
yeah.
and that energy to the midfield that Madison was able to bring to us this season. But someone else to link up and take players on, I think would be fantastic. But and then yeah, one more defender, I think just to kind of shore up a little extra depth. But Dragonson, I think played pretty well towards the end of the season, honestly at the Euros too. So maybe we'll just see some more of him too.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer to that question. Thinking about the specific profile of player that we're actually likely to bring in, I think gives me a different perspective on my answer to that question. So when I thought about how I'd answer this, I thought about Archie Gray, and
Hmm.
how yesterday he played center back during his half, but he's obviously listed as a central defensive midfielder. And then I've also had a friend of mine from work talk about how he comes from a family of great right backs and left backs. His family, they played at Leeds United and are like
Hmm.
club legends there. His family, and so obviously he looked big. He looked a lot bigger than I
Yeah,
expected him to
he
look.
looked like a center back almost.
Right, and he calm on the ball as well that you really like to see. He looked like he had a lot of control. So I think genuinely, if we could bring in another player of that type of profile that's
Hmm.
able to play maybe in the six, especially if we're able to sell Højbjerg and get some money from that sale, then I think
Yeah,
bringing in another player of that type of profile that's able to fill in, at left back, right back, and at six,
agreed.
would really be valuable. I think in terms of center back, honestly, if we add any more, it's going to cause more issues than it solves because I
I
think
agree.
our three center backs that we have right now are all quality. I think Dragusin have really opened a lot of people's eyes during the Euros. At least in my opinion, I think the narrative is really starting to pick up in his favor. I would say, and so that's what I would do in terms of the six and then the back line. But like you had said, I think the most paramount issue is that we need to add a pronounced goal scorer in our squad.
Yeah,
We need someone that's able to create opportunities by themselves in positions that that are further away from goal than we typically do score from. I don't think we really have a player that, whether it's with their speed or their dribbling ability, is able to consistently take people on one and put shots on goal and put the ball in the back of the net. But that's
yeah,
obviously easier said than done. It's the hardest thing to do in the game. So those players come at a high price, which, again goes back to what I was saying originally about my perspective of, the type of profile and the player that we would bring in. So I'll say that we bring in an ideal world, a player like I had said in the back line that can play six in either right or left back. And then in the front line, Eberechi Eze, like you had mentioned previously, a player who's able to fill in at the 10 role as well as play as a winger. Or if it's honestly just an out and out striker who we spend money on, who's Premier League proven or is like much, much more likely to succeed than flop, then I think I'd
yeah.
be happy as well. But we just need someone. Honestly, we need the type of player that you're going to have to spend a lot of money on in today's market in our front line to really accomplish a lot of the things that the fans would want to see. Do you have anything to add on that?
No, I mean I agree. Especially, I mean, like you said, being a forward, that's something that you really can't teach to a certain degree. Like some of that just comes natural, especially just getting the ball, wanting to turn, face goal, take shots. Um, Especially taking shots like outside of the box. I feel like I like I like that we signed Timo officially. I like Brennan Johnson. I think they're both good players. I think they both bring that being able to kind of do one-on-one, break past defenders. I think both of them are more assisters, I think, at this point than true goal scorers, like
I
whipping the
agree.
ball in. And I think if we can get someone also that's good in the air, because I think they're going to get a lot of crosses off this season. Someone
Yeah,
that's good in the air, but then also, again, someone that's not afraid to take a shot outside the 18. I think that's what we were missing a lot, especially at the end of last season too. Because I think Son used to be that guy, cut in, whip it across on either side, either foot. But I think he got a little timid toward the end of last season. So hopefully he can bring that up, and then we can get another striker like you're saying that is proven and just is hungry to score goals.
I completely agree with you there. Yes, I do think to end this segment out in terms of what an ideal world we would bring in for the rest of the summer. I think the squad is in a lot better of a place than a lot of people think,
Yep.
especially if we're able to keep this core group together. That's been rising through the academy, playing the same system. I think in 3 years' time, we're really gonna turn back and be like, wow, this was kind of the beginning of this special project that Ann just created. But
Yep.
at the same time, I still think we needed at minimum two more signings, honestly, of players of real quality if we want to. I mean, maybe we'd qualify for Europe, but it would be very difficult. I could see it not happening more likely than it actually happening if we just continue with the same squad that we have right now because injuries are going to happen and we have more
Hmm.
games than last season. So I think that work is still to be done, which, the transfer window is a month away from being over, maybe a little bit more than that. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Moving into the last topic, what does success look like for the upcoming season? Obviously, yesterday was Tottenham's first preseason match. So, Jamal, I'll go to you again to start this last topic. In your opinion, what would you consider the season looking like to be a success for this upcoming 24-25 campaign?
Um, to be a success, I think honestly, if we can maintain the result that we got last season, at least staying in Europa League, I think ideally we get into that top four so we can get back into Champions League. But again, that will require more depth and more quality players, especially once we get into that next season. But I think the initial goal is break back into that top four,
Yeah.
kind of settle in again as that top four club consistently. Obviously, anyone's going to say, we want to win the Premier League, but I think realistically, I think especially with kind of the where other teams are, especially in a little bit of a rebuild with like Chelsea, Man U, and who
Who
knows how
knows what
Liverpool's going
Liverpool's
to
going to.
do
Yeah,
with the
exactly.
exactly with their new coach. And so, I think City's kind of just up there. There's no question that they're going to be up at the top somewhere. But I think that again, I feel like we have a lot of the top six teams are in a little bit of a rebuild phase. So I think we can try to capitalize on that and sneak into that top four.
Yeah, I think that would be a good year. There's a few interesting things that when I asked a couple of my friends about this question, their answers, and one I would say is one of the main things I don't want for us to happen is an early exit from one of the cups. I
Yeah.
mean, going out really early of one of the English ones in order to stay in the Europa League longer wouldn't be the worst. But I mean, if we end up just going out of all the cups again quite early, it's going to be a massive letdown to me, to be honest. So I really don't foresee Ange making some of the mistakes that he had made last season. But I would really hope for us to make a deep run in the Europa League in an ideal world, because that
Hmm.
seems like it's probably the most likely out of the FA and the Carabao Cup and the Premier League. But
Hmm.
I just overall, in terms of the cups, I really don't want to leave any of them super early like we have in previous recent years. I also, obviously, top four would be amazing, but I think European football specifically, I think if
Hmm.
we're able to make a deep run, like I just said, in one of the tournaments, and again make European football, whether it's even Conference League, I think I would consider this season a success. And just second year, obviously the landscape of the Premier League is changing, but City and they who will not be mentioned are basically at the top right now.
Yep.
So we are still in the beginning of our project, but I do think there are some really encouraging signs if you're a Tottenham fan in terms of what you can hope for to come. Did you have anything that you wanted to add in terms of anything that you specifically want to happen really bad this season? Obviously, we want to win a trophy. Obviously, we want to win the Premier League. But other than that, something you really want to happen or something you really want to avoid?
No, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily outside of again injuries as much as possible, trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
Um, but other than that, I mean, I think I'm just excited to see what another year under Ange provides. I think he kind of shocked us. I know I didn't know much about him when he first came into the club, honestly. So it was exciting seeing his gameplay. I think he has the right players for what he likes to do. Again, if we can just get that pure forward in there again and score some extra goals. Um, but I mean, I just really want to see Tottenham keep playing the same way they did last year. It was a lot more aggressive. It was a lot more heart, especially at the beginning of the season. And I would just like to see that continue all the way through, and not kind of seem like we kind of died out at the end of last season with like
Right.
I don't know 8-10 games left. So it'd be great to not see that fire die out, halfway through the second half of the season.
Or yeah, I completely agree. Or if we could just not lose, a few of those games that we
Right,
really should have, been winning or at least gotten some results from. I think
right.
that's something in recent years that, especially towards the end of the seasons, that Spurs have struggled with, where other teams that are competing for the league, even if they're not winning, they're finding a way to get results. And for some reason, every it's like a moon, like some sort of cycle. Every month and a half, we just
Hmm.
lose in shocking fashion to a team that we shouldn't in the second half of the season. So hopefully we can avoid that. But again, I am optimistic. I'm a lot more optimistic for this season than I was for last year.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do a video next week or the week after where we predict the entire Premier League table. But
I was thinking
the
the
la-
same thing. Yeah.
the last question I'll pose to you is if you had to put a position on where you think, like in actuality with realistic lenses on, Tottenham would finish in the Premier League this season, what position is it going to be?
Speaking with the brain and not the heart, I think we probably end up in the same slot that we're in right now, with which is fifth. I think that's realistic. I think that's a good goal. It would keep us in, European football at least too. I think that's realistic. I think we have the players to do it. I mean, even seeing last season, even with the injuries last season, we still were able to, pull through and get fifth. And I think, again, the other top teams are still in that same kind of a little bit of disarray. I
Yeah.
think we saw them start to come up towards the end of last season. But I don't know if they have it fully figured out. So I think we are still able to, keep that fifth slot.
Nice. I think I would want to say fourth
Okay.
if we had brought in more players thus
Yeah.
far this summer. But I think on July 18th at 4 p.m. Central in 2024, I'm going to say we are going to finish fifth again as well. I think I'm going to
Yeah.
have to be boring and then completely agree with your prediction. I think that it's going to be fifth. I think we're going to get a deep run in the Europa League. Hopefully, we can make some magic happen and get a nice run of games. But I'm optimistic for this season. You're here at the end of the video. If you've made it this far, thank you so incredibly much for listening to us talk about Tottenham. We really greatly appreciate it. Jamal, is there anything that you would want to promote or any place that you'd want to send somebody watching this video?
Not right now. I don't think I have any projects or anything happening at the moment, so nothing to plug today.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much. I'm not sure if I've said thank you. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that we can do it again soon. And if, again, you're still watching this video, let me know what you thought about the things we had discussed in this video in the comments. And like this video if you've made it here as well. To be world class, subscribe down below for a silky first touch. It has been Tip Top Tottenham with my special guest and good friend Jamal. Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur. Thank you
Let's
again.
go.